All right, so I want to talk about the attack that happened at the Kabul airport yesterday because there are many reactionaries that are using this as an opportunity to try to push forward things like further military occupation or other ridiculous military responses that would do nothing but put more people's lives in jeopardy. And so I want to give you the basic facts, and then we can talk about how exactly this unfolded. But one of the first things that you have to understand is the people that are responsible for this attack, ISIS, okay, this specific division of ISIS, ISIS-K is what they are known as. They are not friends with the Taliban, okay? The Taliban has absolutely no interest whatsoever in allowing for any sort of attack like this to occur because all that would do is increase the likelihood that the United States would stay longer in Afghanistan, and that is the absolute last thing that the Taliban wants. So the Taliban and this division of this affiliate of ISIS, they are not friends. They are not working in tandem. There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever for that to be the case, and yet still, as we are going to get to a clip later in this video, CNN still pushing some of that propaganda based on absolutely no evidence to try to justify further military action in Afghanistan. So let's get to the basic facts. So the U.S. says Kabul airport attack was carried out by one bomber. Initially, they said that there were multiple bombers. Now the Pentagon, again, the Pentagon, is saying that there was just one. So this is what they're saying at this time. We do not believe that there was a second explosion at or near the Barron Hotel, that it was just one suicide bomber, according to U.S. Army Major General William Taylor, and at least 110 people have been killed in the explosion, according to Al Jazeera's team in Afghanistan. And the U.S. troops helping to evacuate Afghans desperate to flee Taliban rule are bracing for more attacks. So, still a very volatile situation. Up until this point in the evacuation process, obviously no Americans had been killed. So it had been going relatively smoothly, considering the, and I mean relative to the chaos of what it looks like to lose a 20-year war. It had been going relatively smoothly up until this point, and yet still the evacuations will be continuing, as they are saying here. Quote, we have seen a number of planes take off. The number of people around the airport has grown dramatically since yesterday, and we have seen thousands of people scrambling up against a wall there, desperate to get on the few remaining planes. And Thursday's attack was claimed by ISIS, an offshoot in Afghanistan. The Islamic State in Khorasan province, otherwise known as ISIS-K, is what they are being referred to as, which said its suicide bombers singled out translators and collaborators with the American army. Okay, so Biden came out, he gave a statement, said we're going to find you, we're going to hunt you down and kill you. Okay, we'll have to see what that actually means in terms of, is he going to be trying to deploy some sort of drone programs? Is he going to send the CIA into there? We don't know. But he said he's going to be using the full force of the American military and our intelligence operatives to crack down on whoever was responsible for this within ISIS-K. But again, understand, this ISIS affiliate is not friends with the Taliban, okay? So the Taliban was providing some sort of a security barrier in coordination with the U.S. Around the airport. Obviously, it wasn't good enough, and this person, the suicide bomber, was able to get through a couple layers of that security barrier, get to a heavily populated place, ended up killing over 100 people. So it's disastrous, it's horrible, it's terrible, but yet again, it is not a justification for further military presence. If anything, this is evidence that if we had begun this evacuation process sooner, or if we had allowed it to drag on for months and months, then there's a potential that it could have been a significantly more bloody withdrawal process. So that's what my takeaway is it from. But I want to give you guys a little bit more of the history of this in terms of what is ISIS, where did they come from, and how the United States is actually responsible for creating ISIS, specifically George W. Bush. Okay, so here from Mehdi Hassan gives a little bit of a rundown as for some of the reasons why the United States was complicit in creating what is now ISIS. So in Iraq, the U.S. morphed our illegal invasion into Iraq, but in Iraq, the U.S. morphed from heroic liberators into brutal occupiers within a matter of weeks. In Fallujah, which would later become an ISIS stronghold, U.S. troops opened fire on a crowd of peaceful protesters in April 2003, killing and wounding dozens of Iraqis, and the shootings, the torture, the general chaos all helped drive thousands of Iraqis from the minority Sunni community into the arms of radical groups led by brutal gangsters such as Abu Musab al-Zarqawi and Zarqawi's Al-Qaeda in Iraq, formed in 2004 to fight U.S. troops and their local allies, was a precursor organization to ISIS, okay? And then a second, in May 2003, in a criminally stupid and reckless move, the U.S. occupying authorities disbanded the Iraqi army. That's right, the U.S. made more than 500,000 well-armed and well-trained Iraqi troops unemployed overnight. Okay, keep in mind, at the time, the Iraq military was one of the largest in the world, right? It was like top 5 biggest militaries in the world. Just disbanded it, just, go about your day, go about your business and figure it out. And no less, an authority Then General Colin Powell himself, Bush's Secretary of State and America's top former soldier, would later describe those jobless soldiers as, quote, prime recruits for insurgency. And in recent years, many of the top commanders in ISIS have been identified as former senior officers in Saddam Hussein's army. Coincidence? No, because these are the consequences. This is what we call blowback. These are the consequences of illegally invading and launching this war in the first place, and then doing things like, firing 500,000 well-trained security people to just go and figure out their life with no actual plan in place. And so third, the U.S. military detained tens of thousands of Iraqis, many of them non-combatants, at Camp Bucca in southern Iraq, where imprisoned jihadis were able to not only radicalize new recruits in plain sight, but also plan future operations and attacks. Quote, many of us at Camp Bucca were concerned that instead of just holding detainees, we had created a pressure cooker for extremism, Compound Commander James Schuyler Gerond would later remark, and one former Bucca detainee, incidentally, was none other than Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, yes, the self-proclaimed caliph and leader of ISIS who, according to Iraqi terrorism expert Hisham al-Hashimi, absorbed the jihadist ideology and established himself to be among the big names while at Bucca. And to be clear, then ISIS is blowback to the U.S. invasion and occupation of Iraq. And so he's 100% correct there. This is, again, what we call blowback. These are the consequences. When you go and you destabilize regions, you create a power vacuum, you completely destroy the established order that had been in place, the status quo. Although, again, Saddam Hussein was not a great guy. Terrible, horrific dictator, okay? But that doesn't mean that we get to go in there and play global police and then go and fuck up an entire government, create a power vacuum, and then just, wave our hands and be like, whoa, I don't know how these terrorist groups got formed. I wonder how that happened. It's like, well, it's a direct result of our actions. It's the consequences of our own actions. And so again, that's the origin story, at least partially, of ISIS. Okay, so understand, when we're talking about coming full circle in terms of our imperialist ventures in the Middle East, this is what it looks like, okay? It's yet again just evidence that we never should have got involved in this region in the first place, whether it was Iraq, whether it was Afghanistan. We never should have gotten involved in these regions in the first place, and we probably would have been a lot safer and better off for it in the long run. And so, just to give you a perspective on some of the media propaganda that has been coming in the wake of this attack, because there has been plenty of it. Here is H.R. McMaster on CNN saying that he would not be surprised if ISIS-K was used as a cutout for the Taliban, okay, with absolutely no evidence. So let's go ahead and listen to a little bit of this conversation here.
You surrender to jihadist terrorists. And I think, Jim, what's important about this, you may hear this is ISIS-K or whatever, but these terrorist organizations exist in an ecosystem along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border and now all across Afghanistan, in which they share people and resources. Siraj Haqqani is the military commander of the Taliban, and he's a central figure in al-Qaeda. This is a myth, right, that the Taliban is separate from al-Qaeda and these other groups. I would not be surprised in any way if ISIS-K was used, their Kabul attack network was used as a cutout for the Taliban, so they can humiliate us on the way out and still continue to play us, because I don't think they think we're serious people, Jim. I mean,
Okay, yeah, so there you go. H.R. McMaster just coming out there and blatantly saying things without any evidence whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. Just saying, I think maybe Taliban bad, ISIS bad, therefore the Taliban was using this as an opportunity to embarrass us on the way out. Again, even just logically, this doesn't make any sense, even if you didn't know the dynamic and how the Taliban has been literally fighting ISIS. Even if you didn't understand that, it doesn't make sense. Why the fuck would the Taliban, who has just successfully taken over the entire country, taken power and is currently in the process of trying to legitimize themselves on a world stage, why the fuck would they do the one thing in coordinating with ISIS to allow for American soldiers to be killed on the way out? Why would they do that? That's like the only thing that they could possibly do that would then create a situation where the U.S. continues to stay in Afghanistan. That's what ISIS wants, probably, okay? That's not what the Taliban wants. The Taliban is running the country now, okay? They are the government of Afghanistan now. Why would they have any incentive whatsoever to do that? They wouldn't, okay? So there's no evidence whatsoever for what he was just saying. This was not the Taliban in any way, shape, or form, according to the evidence that we have right now. And this is just exactly the type of bullshit propaganda that got us involved in the region in the first place. Like trying to connect Saddam Hussein to 9/11 when they had nothing to fucking do with 9/11. 13 or 14 of the 15 hijackers in 9/11 were from goddamn Saudi Arabia. So was Osama bin Laden. And then, you can say that the Taliban initially was harboring Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, but But listen, within the first 6 months to a year of the war, we had killed a lot of their commanders. We had suppressed them greatly in Afghanistan, and then we ended up finding Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, not in Afghanistan. So these are the types of lies that they had used to get us involved in this 20-year ridiculous, pointless war that got us absolutely nothing but chaos and destruction and loss. And so these are the liars that are going to be continued to be plastered across mainstream media in the wake of these attacks. And like they said in the Al Jazeera report initially, there are likely going to be more attacks like this as we continue the withdrawal process. But again, this was to be expected, okay? This is what it looks like to lose a 20-year war. This is what it looks like to spend trillions of dollars and 2 decades pouring money into a government that ends up collapsing within a couple weeks. This is what it's going to look like, okay? It's brutal and terrible and awful, but the one way that you can guarantee that American soldiers' lives or Afghani lives are not attacked in the same way is by not doing these things in the future, okay? Stop trying to overthrow, whether you're going all the way back to the Reagan administration when they funded the Mujahideen that then fractionalized and turned into the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Don't do this, okay? Don't try to spread your fucking forms of governance and domination and exploitation of resources and labor. Don't do this, okay? These imperial projects never work, and they always lead to terrible, terrible blowback.